This is episode 42 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 42 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm Andrew Hines, and today I have Mandy Branham on the show. Mandy Branham is the self-proclaimed JV queen, and Mandy has 75 JV properties to date. So those are properties that she's done with partners that have put in the money, and she's brought the expertise and the working attitude to get these properties either renovated or just turnkey rented out and generate positive cash flow and hopefully get the investors in with just around $60,000. Her story shows a lot of grit. She's been very aggressive about it, and she balances the needs of her family along with building a pretty aggressive portfolio since 2014. What she's done is nothing short of inspiring, so I'm really confident that you're going to enjoy this episode. It's great to see somebody absolutely crushing it the way that she is. Quick housekeeping, we host the Greater Hamilton REI meetup every single month here in Burlington, Ontario, and this is where you get to meet other real estate investors, connect, share stories and ideas, and grow together. This is a completely free event, so if you're not already in our private Facebook group, make sure that you either send me a message at the Andrew Hines on Instagram, or feel free to click the link in the show notes of this episode so that you can be a part of our group and you can benefit from our community and contribute to it just like everyone else is. I would really love the opportunity to meet you at one of these events. So without further ado, please enjoy episode 42 with Mandy Branham. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Mandy Branham on this episode. Mandy, how are you?
Excellent. Been a busy day, lots going on, lots of balls in the air, juggling lots, but you know what? No different than everybody else that's got a busy life. Yeah,
it seems like it gets busier, but I'm like... might go busier for a while and then go less busy after that.
Yeah. There's definitely an ebb and flow of ups and downs depending on where you are with deals and everything, right? Life.
Yeah. So you actually drove down from quite a ways, right? You come down for the meetups that happen monthly here in Burlington.
Definitely. I'm a driver. So 2 hours is I go Durham region as well, out 2 hours to Quinton sometimes. So there's, it's worth it.
Yeah, you're making a lot of connections because a lot of people refer to you, I think your Instagram handle is JV Queen, is it?
JV Queen.
Yeah, so I guess you're into JVs is what you're saying. So yes. I actually am, I think I saw an article on you in a magazine at one point in time. The details are foggy because it was a while ago. Yep. So why don't you just enlighten our viewers and listeners as to what you've been up to?
Started investing in 2014, joined a coaching group, and from there went from, the 2 properties that we had on our own. We did a couple of our own properties, flipped to ourselves, got all of our money back, and really started to recognize that people were watching. And so from 2015 today, we've transacted on 75 properties. Mm-hmm. So under 5 years. A majority of them are joint ventures. We certainly have some on our own that we, of course, maxed out on financing and, got as creative as we could get. But it was just... The best way was for us to be able to help other people invest in real estate that didn't have the time. So, that's what I do.
Yes. Are you actively keeping these properties? Are you flipping them? What's your main strategy with them? You're all keepers.
Hold. So when I meet a potential joint venture, it's always, hey, let's talk about what it is you're looking to get out of real estate. So one of my favorite stories to be able to share is a gentleman that said that came to us, and he has a severely autistic child. And so together we bought a property for his child's retirement. So the purpose behind that investment was not get rich quick, was not, fast cash, so we looked for an asset that matched those needs. And it was just a beautiful thing to be able to go shopping with that kind of outlook. So definitely long-term buy and holds, 5 years minimum. Typically is what our joint ventures are. And then we have a human conversation like, hey, where are you in life? Where am I? Oh, my daughter's getting married. I need some that's why we bought this 5 years ago, was to help with weddings or help with tuition or, help with my retirement. And so let's sell it or, hey, you know what? I don't need the money. And we just refinance it if we can refinance it. And we hold on to it.
So you do a 5-year horizon. That's typically what you're looking at, and then reevaluate at that point.
Follow the term of the mortgage. So if we get a 5-year mortgage, that's what we do. I've had a couple that do 3-year terms just for specific reasons around I'm going to be retiring in 4 years. So I want to look at a 3-year refinance, which we did. We refinanced. And then now she set it and forget it. We pulled out all the money.
Okay, so in your typical structure would be your partner is going in with all the capital. Are you doing renovations and then refinancing, or is it just buy and hold?
It varies. You know, we definitely have turnkey properties that are high cash flow. We just closed on a property in Kingston, turnkey triplex, no renovations required, but lots of potential lift, and we got it under market value. So I just want to share with people that just because there's no needed doesn't mean that it's not that you're not making money in the buy, and it's, you know, still a good asset to be able to offer to a JV. Majority of them, I definitely specialize in single family conversions to duplexes or the BRRRR strategy.
Okay, so you're doing a lot of duplex conversions. That's a big one for you. Okay.
Yeah.
What areas?
Kingston, St. Catharines, Hamilton, Barrie, Orillia, Midland, Penetang.
Where's Penetang?
Midland, Penetang. It's like Georgian Bay.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so I know where Midland is.
Yeah.
So you are spread all over the place. Do you have people that work in your outfit, or is it all about having really good general contractors? Tell me how you structure yourself to be able to pull that off. 75 properties over the course of 5-6 years.
Yeah. So we started off creating the systems in our own backyard, and then we just realized that the systems can be taught, duplicated ourselves in other cities. So we actually have representation of ourselves, working partners on the ground, which have created the same systems that we created in our hometown, and we've just duplicated it in those models.
Do you have a corporation that has those people on payroll?
No, they're joint venture partners of mine.
So you're joint venture partners that come in and want to invest in the Golden Horseshoe, St. Catharines, well, and whatever.
Yep.
Those people would be people that are willing to be feet on the ground.
No, so I have, so it's still, we'll say it's still a 50-50 model. But I share my 50% with somebody that's on the ground.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you still do 50-50, but you might split yours up to work. Just so that you can do more. Okay. Yeah. Hey, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Now, as far as duplicating yourself, I think that's a very interesting conversation because it's something I've specifically struggled with. And I've found the one thing that works is creating manuals, but they're very time intensive.
Yeah.
Like a procedure, a manual and a procedure.
Yeah.
How have you grown? How have you taught somebody else to have the same eye for things that you do?
Yeah. So I did take a week away back in 2017 and did a Mandy brain dump. There was definitely that, what it called, drop dead Mandy method. And if I were to leave what information was in my head that nobody knew, now there were pieces of information that my property manager would know or that my certain contractors. But so I actually invested a week of quiet time at a cottage and downloaded my thoughts and put it all on paper. The onboarding process for a new mentee coming into my program is typically 4 to 6 months, where we go over and we look at market conditions. We look at all kinds of different things, get the contractor set up. So I'm teaching them those systems over the course of that onboarding process.
Okay, so the brain dump is it's the various different things that they need to know, the tools that they need in their toolkit.
Yeah.
So you're kind of communicating what you would like to see, or you were communicating what you would like to see.
Oh,
in that
absolutely.
Type of person.
And what to look for in a deal. Like what do I look for in a deal? What is attractive to a joint venture? And, you know, there are deals that I've passed up and we're like, nope, that doesn't work for me and my joint venture model. And another investor will come in and go, I think you're crazy, Mandy. You know, you missed something. And I said, yeah, but that's your money and your time, and you're the renovator and you're the contractor, you're the financer, all those kind of things. So they've got more areas to be able to play with. When I'm bringing in somebody else, there's a certain amount of lift that I look for. There's a certain value that I buy it and need that space between purchase and renovate and ARV, all that kind of stuff. So
let's go through a basic kind of model of a deal that would make sense to you. So you mentioned ARV, so that's after repair value. Yes. For anybody who's not familiar. Okay, so tell me about a deal that you might have tackled lately and what criteria you were looking for and what that deal looked like.
Sure. So we bought it in Kingston, was 280. We'll just round to 280. Might have been 282, but we'll say 280,000. Renovations will be 80. ARV is 420.
Okay, so in your renovations, like carrying costs are in there, or like that's all in. Okay.
No, carrying costs are that's just renovation. So I would put another 10,000 for closing costs, carrying costs.
Yeah, okay. I'll make it 90 then.
Sure.
90 for reno and carrying.
Okay. Yep.
So then your after repair value, your purchase plus purchase and reno is equal to, and carrying costs is equal to 370.
Yep.
And where do you think you'll be as far as and after repair value?
420 conservatively.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, will you go back to the bank? So your JV partner holds title and holds the mortgage. You'll go back to the bank and arrange a refi?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to have a 336 mortgage at 80%, which if you're working with people that don't have other mortgages in their name, that's doable.
Yeah.
So that's going to put you at $34,000 net investment. So after refi net investment.
Yep.
All right. What's that deal going to look like from a cash flow standpoint?
I think it's about $600 a month.
And that's factoring maintenance and all that.
Maintenance, vacancy, property management.
Yeah. Okay, that's nice. That's the triplex you were mentioning?
No, that is not the triplex.
Different one. Okay.
Yeah.
So $600 times 12 months, so that's 7,200. Appreciation in that market, we'll
4%.
figure. You're gonna say 4?
Yeah.
Let's say 3.
You could say 3.
We'll
I'm
be
fine with
conservative.
3.
Yeah. You always could get it, but just in case, we'll play conservative. I think your numbers are still gonna look good, and then your pay down. If we just say 3% on that mortgage.
Absolutely.
So cash flow 7,200, appreciation 12,600 at a 3% rate, and then pay down on the mortgage would be $10,080. And if we add all that up, your return on that is just short of 30,000, so 29,880.
Yep.
And if you were to do an ROI, so a return on investment for your investor, well, you're splitting it obviously.
Divided by the remaining 34,000.
So you're almost at 100%, right? That's 29,880. So 87.88%. That's pretty solid. So, even if the investor's only getting half of that because you're splitting it, that's still almost 44% on their money.
I don't get out of bed for less than 30, which means that my partner minimally will make ever 15. So it just kind of shows you where the deals are that I look for. The varying factors for what properties I would place a partner in is if somebody needed significant cash flow, then we would definitely be going in an area where cash flow is higher. If somebody just liked the Golden Horseshoe and they wanted to invest in Hamilton, well then they might be leaving $60,000 in a deal with half of the cash flow, half of that. Like if we could get...
So the return might not be as good in certain circumstances.
The returns would be good because your market appreciation you could put at, what do we put in Hamilton now comfortably?
Well, you know what? I don't my numbers. Okay. I never do.
So
but I mean, if you look at what you have had, oh man, you could have what, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, so then I would put conservatively 4.
Yeah.
And be able to say to somebody like, your money is secure. The tenant profile is phenomenal. The market rents are high and the asset value is so solid. But no, you're not going to get paid a lot of money every month. So the ROIs are going to be similar. Like I think we're talking 60% return on investment. Split that in half. My partners are getting 30, and but the cash flow is not great. But it's still a phenomenal market to be able to duplicate it.
Yeah, I just had a person on earlier today that he was talking about how he's doing deals. It wasn't Robbie, it was the guy before him, but basically deals that he's just trying to break even, but he's doing it in the Toronto market, actually, like Toronto proper, Port Credit, where it's all appreciation. It's an appreciation game. Now that always made me feel a little uncomfortable. I like the cash flow because appreciation could end one day. But. Yeah,
and it's very different how you filter when you bringing in somebody else's money.
Sure.
Okay. And so I have the conversation. It's interesting because I have a couple private lenders that I just wanted to try a different method. And these private lenders are like, oh, I would like an update. I would like pictures. And I was like, wait a minute here. You're not my partner and you're a private money lender. And if you want all these updates, then maybe you could become a partner. But in the meantime, you're not. And so when I bring in a partner, I have specific things that I look for, the risk tolerance that I'm able to have. Cash flow is essential. I would never go into a deal that we don't. The only time we potentially go into lower cash flow is agreed upon a refinance, to be able to say, hey, we could get $700, we'll just say, for this duplex in Hamilton. But if we did that, we would be at, break even cash flow. So do we want to refinance up to the max, or do we want to refinance at 650 or 610 or 600 so we can maintain that $300 cash flow? Other ways that I'll go about it is, if agreed upon, we'll say, hey, let's go up to the 700, max out the refinance value that the bank will give us, but we're going to leave a $10,000 to $15,000 reserve fund. So really, it's still us borrowing the money from the bank, but we're setting it aside for the cash flow in a different form.
You must have a really good bookkeeper with 75 properties on the go.
You know what? I tell you a story. I listened to a Robert Kiyosaki podcast one time, and at the end of his Rich Dad podcast, it's always the Ask Robert. And there's this gentleman that got on and said, hey, Robert, I've got a deal I'd love for you to be able to, can I pitch it to you? And Robert said, sure, just tell me, like, who's your bookkeeper? Who's your accountant? And the guy said, oh, I do my own bookkeeping and my own accounting. And Robert goes, well, I'm out. And the guy goes, but you haven't even heard about my deal. And Robert goes, if you don't even have a bookkeeper and an accountant, I don't want to do business with you. So I called my bookkeeper and I was like, I love you. Thank you. And just realized that it was just essential for me to be able to have those tools now. It's scalable. It's reputable. I have people on my power team. I won an award recently with Rain. And the following morning, my accountant called me. And she said, I heard that you won and I just wanted to congratulate you. So that you have those people on your team that are there to support you through the hard times and the what should I do and the good times. So
yeah, having the team is huge. Sounds like you've pulled the trigger on that early on. I mean, there was going to be a breaking point with trying to do all that. I found bookkeeping for me was something that started really, not nearly as good as it is now. Yeah. The quality of it, and so I have a pretty high standard for that. I do have a bookkeeper that I work with. Yeah, and it's just like we both work it. Yeah. We both have the QuickBooks Online. We can both, tap in and stuff. And that's what I like. I like to be able to see it. I don't know if you can see yours too. But do you have a different bank account? You must have every single JV partner's got an account with you, right?
Definitely some logistical. Yeah. Like, holy crud, I didn't realize it. Not every property has its own account. I've got a couple partners that have 3, 4, 5. And so we will lump those into a bank account together. But majority of them, it's super easy for bookkeeping. So it's almost like the lesser of two pissers. So you're going to be, you're going to have a bookkeeping nightmare, or you're going to have a bank account nightmare. And, right, for me, the bank accounts are easier for me to handle. I go in and the bank clerks are like, I don't know how you keep all this stuff straight. I was like, don't ask.
Well, I think the key is don't go into the bank anymore. Do it all from home.
There's definitely still stuff that I need though.
Drafts. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, if Interact could just raise their limits, we'd be fine. But so it's silly little things like that you come up to that you just kind of go, there's no system around this. Or
do you have ACH direct deposit?
No.
That's the next one on the list.
Okay.
Business account though, it has to be off a business account. But you can basically, so I do for my employees. Yeah. I do direct deposit for any of my sub trades. Everyone gets paid direct deposit.
I like it.
And it's just a huge time saver. You set your own limit. So if you want to set your limit to $1 million, you can. Right. Okay. You have a password and a key fob with a code that resets every 5-6 seconds. Okay. So it's secure in that sense.
Does it have to be a certain bank they're using, like a business bank?
Well, I use through RBC, but I've seen it from other banks too. I've seen the exact same fob with BMO. I'm sure there are other banks that have it. Might be a major time saver for you if you can send money online between, like, I don't know if you're with TD or whatever, you send it between the one account to your business account, and then from there you can do the magic.
Yeah. So see, perfect. Thank you. I love that. I'm always open to new tips because there's always bigger and better ways to be able to do things.
Well, just going into the bank is something that I don't like doing. And if you can avoid drafts, and ACH is pretty quick, like I can pay somebody next day. Yeah. Even to my lawyer's trust account, I could send it. Okay.
Do you have a way to be able to open joint accounts without that you've not stumbled into?
Without going in? No, that I have not.
Again, it's a logistical thing, right? We need these accounts, and so it's I've already.
That's hard because you're in one area. So you have to drive down just to open a bank account, right?
I have certain people now that they understand what I'm doing.
And they'll open the
so
accounts.
they will open the accounts. So one of my JV partners who were like, well, I can do that myself. And she's lovely. She really is. And I was like, hey, you know what? She's going to try. Let her try, right? And nope, didn't work. Was a nightmare. Was 3 weeks before they actually opened it up, all those kind of things. So.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess, the logistical problems just grow. But if you got a good team, do you have any employees direct?
Yes, we have. We have a property management company. Within there, we have an office assistant with my property manager. We've got a full-time cleaner, full-time handyman there. And then on the construction side, we've got 2 laborers and a contractor. And then my husband, that's more the project manager.
And where are they based out of? Where's that operation based out of?
So that's the Midland,
That's your
Penetang,
home,
Aurelia area.
Okay.
Yeah. So that system, that umbrella of our companies, that's what we're going to duplicate in various areas. So more of the acquisition person. Yeah. Acquisition, management, and construction.
Do you mind telling me a little bit about the type of scope on your renovation? I know you said you're doing a lot of duplex conversions.
Yep.
Is that so? Even up there in Midland, you're still doing that there?
Yeah, it's a great market. So again, we're looking for price points that are appropriate. With the renovations are $80,000 to $100,000 pretty much anywhere you go. Some municipalities have expectations over others, right? St. Catharines is just, a bit of a nightmare to have to work with. 80 to 100,000 is renovations Ontario wide right now. So it's a matter of where can I buy and renovate for that 80,000. We do a lot of renovate to rent. And I want to shout that to the world because a lot of investors, they make their house look appraisal ready, which I agree with. I support that. But then they have this unbalanced perception that a tenant, whether you're a phenomenal tenant or not, that you're going to get scratches on the floor, you're going to get nicks in your wall, you're going to get holes with pictures. And then they want this perfect tenant profile. But so their house is still always going to be lived in. It's going to become somebody's home. And so we just kind of look at it and go, if I can keep my rent down because I keep the kitchen and paint it, then I'm not going to be upset if in 5 years I have to replace the kitchen then. But I look to keep my renovation costs down at the get-go. Because there's, something to be said about, hey, we're going to refinance this in 5 years. Why don't we take $10,000 of that time and redo the kitchen upstairs? Because when I'm attracting a financial partner, if I were to say, we're going to do everything, you're $120,000 in, I'm offering them, it's going to be a $200,000+ amount of money. It's a barrier to entry for a lot of my partners.
So are you generally leaving the upstairs untouched?
I love it when the upstairs is
so you can just leave it. Yeah, I think that sounds fantastic too, to me.
Right? You close off the wall. So what do? You close off the wall, add washer, dryer, interconnected smoke detectors.
Yeah, so a couple of holes in the drywall to connect the smoke detectors. Done. And then you do the fire code drywall in the basement and to section it off. That's a beautiful reno right there. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that type of renovation, we're talking about a duplex, you're creating a duplex that's a single family home, a bungalow with a side door entrance.
Yep.
And that side door has stairs up and stairs down. So that's perfect. Then you can just section off that little cavity as a washer dryer stackable.
Yep.
Which is like the standard model. Everybody seems to be doing it. Hey, why fix it if it isn't broken? And then, of course, if you can just get away with doing that basement, 80 grand and, work the kind of numbers that you just showed me, that's a really big win for everyone.
Yeah.
Keeps the renovation simple, keeps the scope down so that you can do more deals.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that they overthink things. The windows. Well, the windows are going to need to be done. Let me repeat that. The windows are going to need to be redone. Does that mean they have to be redone right now? And, there's this, my eyes are wide open, but that doesn't mean that things have to be done immediately right now. And we renovated our own primary res and it took longer than all these other ones. And the reality is that we did things at a slow pace. When we had the money, we put an extra little bit in. And so you go, okay, the front doors need to be replaced, but the windows can wait. And maybe you replace one at a time. Maybe things happen, but the house doesn't have to be brand new for a tenant to be in there.
Right. And I think that's an important lesson. Like I have a property with a furnace that's 30 years old. And you know what? I was about to replace it and then I looked at the cost. I'm like, No, I'm not going to replace it. If it breaks in the middle of the winter, then maybe I will. But
so for a property like that, it's a great. I love that. Okay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Although in my mind now, my reserve fund on that property would have this 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. So if a partner were to say, hey, we've got, X amount of dollars in the bank account, let's take cash flow, I will remind them that we're on year 30 of the furnace. So it's either we can take the cash flow and then have to do a cash injection to be able to cover that, or we can just let it sit there, right?
I'm a fan of the leave it model. No one wants a cash call. So
no,
just don't. For me, I was just talking about this on the previous podcast, but the 5% maintenance thing, I used to always say 5% was enough, especially on my newer renovated properties. But even on those, stuff comes up. I mean, if you're figuring true life cycle stuff like shingles, figure every 15 to 20 years. If your roof was done well, I've seen them go after 10 years or less if they weren't done well.
Yep.
And you got to figure that's coming. Furnaces are usually, the newer ones are only good for like 10 to 15 years. Sometimes some of them get to 20. And those aren't cheap. Those are big. Those are like, depending on who you got to do it, you could be spending $6,000 to do both, or more, 7.
I've even had the sewer lines collapse. And
those are the bad ones. Those are the bad cash calls you do not want to get.
Yeah, but they redid the road out front, and then the sewer line went. So my partner was like, "Well, what's going on?" I was like, "What's going on? You want to call the city because their big machines and whatever is probably led to what had happened, but nobody could see those coming. So if we don't have reserve funds for the ones that we do see potentially coming, I almost call them like A, B, and C renovations, right? The A are, oh my gosh, this needs to be done right now.
Yeah.
The B is, hey, the roof's not looking too great. We probably have another 2 to 3 years out of it. And then the ones are, hey, when and if the tenants go, we really could look at the kitchen. It's not essential, but it's let's have the conversation so that we're nobody's shocked and shaken when I say, yep, it needs to go, or, we would really attract a better quality tenant if we turned it over. So a lot of the other way for people to be able to see deals, of course, create deals, as Ryan Carr, a genius that he is, would indicate, would be to say, hey, let's buy this turnkey as is. And leave it. Like, don't do anything to it. In the back of your mind, you say, hey, there's lots of renovations for us to do. When and if the tenants move out, then we will renovate the units as is. So we bought a property for $200,000, 2017. Finally, one of the tenants moved out. She went from $860 all inclusive. We did $12,000 renovation to her unit and brought it up to $300,000. So my partner was able to refinance all of his money out in under 2 years, and then the cash flow went up. Even though the mortgage has gone up, we put somebody in for $1,200 plus hydro. So it's like $450 increase in our monthly cash flow coming to us.
Don't you just love that? I love it when you turn something over and your cash flow goes up. That's just like free money.
You look like a genius. So you almost have to underestimate what the property could be, and see opportunity where other people's don't. Mandy, how have you bought all these properties? Somebody would, they always say, well, you must obviously do yellow letters and knock on doors. And I go, like, I ain't got no time for that kind of thing. I use a realtor. I would tell you that 75% of my deals are from the MLS,
there are on-market deals for sure. You just got to know your market.
Mm-hmm.
You know your market. So when something comes up, you jump on it, right? I had Sarah on this podcast, and Sarah went through a deal, Sarah Larby, a deal that she did, and she made, I think she pulled out $39,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. You get paid $39,000 to keep a property.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you got a JV partner, they're happy. They pulled all their money back out. I don't know how you work at it. How do you work it out in situations like that where you find a smoking deal and you can pull all the money back out?
Yeah. So the beauty of my model is that I don't get paid until my partners have 100% of their capital back.
So you don't take any cash flow, anything like that?
50% of the cash flow.
Okay.
Because you know what? Everybody needs to eat. But typically I've had, I think, 4 or 5 deals where after the initial renovations, my partners get all of their money back and we split.
Okay, so if you refinance up to the break-even point for yourself or for your investor,
For
and
my
then
investor.
anything after that is split, you guys both have access to that money to use.
Yep.
Now-
So once they have all their original capital back, and let's just say we still have 20% equity, technically, 10% of that equity is mine if they have all their capital back.
Yeah. That must be. It gets kind of messy when you're trying to.
Not anymore. Not with a bookkeeper, right?
You're tracking all the interest deductible, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Is it to your corporation?
When I started, it was personally, so I still have some JVs that were personal, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is growing pretty fast, and now we certainly have a plethora of corporations. So yes, typically it would be personal name to my corporation. Sometimes it's corporation to corporation, and again, when we first got started, it was personal name to personal name. So.
Right. So obviously the implications, which I'm sure you stumbled across, is the banks, if you're showing properties owned on your personal taxes, they're going to hold that against you when you're trying to get mortgages, even if you're not on title. They could. That some could. I know not all of them would if you say you're not, but I've heard of in bad instances where they would. It just depends on the underwriter you get. So hopefully you get a good...
Same thing with if your partner's in your corporation, when you start to have to show 2 years of tax returns, the second that one underwriter said, hey, it only shows 50% ownership of this property, who owns the other 50%,
and then it
got a little sticky.
Yes. See, that's what I was wondering about. Yeah, what do you do on the other side when you're going to the bank and refinancing, and they say, well, you only own 50%. What's up? But you're still getting it done.
Yeah,
it's not been a problem. Well, I guess you're still going early, right? Like you guys do the work in the first year. It's more going to be like the 5 year down the road. If you want to refi, then they start asking the question.
Yeah.
These are good. I like these conversations, and I'm sorry for anyone listening if you didn't follow along with that. That was like my own personal interest there. But basically, banks make you sign this thing that says there's no other beneficial owner. So if it's a JV, technically that's a little bit of a gray area with the bank. In most cases they don't know about it, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things you got to be cognizant of. I've seen it not be an issue for people. I mean, obviously some underwriters at banks are going to say, hey, what's that? And have an issue.
Yeah. The lawyer sits across the table and says, you know what, I'm happy to sign all of these agreements. There's nothing inappropriate about what you're saying. I'm not lying to any banks. My accountant is like, Mandy, you're playing all above table. And so, when you've got these people on your power team that are supporting you, you kind of go, hey, I think this is, it's a good way to go. But I'm not saying that it's something that every bank, but you kind of look at it and go, like, there are some pretty big fish playing JV games around. So,
and that's the thing that I think as an investor has served me is watch what's working for other people.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody else is doing it, there's clearly a way.
Yeah.
So then you got to keep an eye out and say, okay, well, how are they doing that?
Yeah.
Maybe call the people who are involved in transactions and figure out what they did or how they got it done. Work with their finance guy.
All I know is that there is more money out there than there are people, Andrew, people like us, people that are listening right now, that are the doers, that are the ones that are out there looking at properties and looking to grow portfolios. So maybe there's a balance of passive investors that are just like, hey, I want real estate. So I always say to people, I'm looking for investors who want real estate as part of a diversified investment portfolio. Okay. But there are more people with money than there are people like us on this side that are working and knowledgeable and learning and growing and on the ground. And so we almost have a duty to be able to be the working partner. And I want those people that are like, hey, I want to get into real estate. I see the benefits of it. I'm learning all this stuff, but I don't have any money. There's so much you can bring to the table. You just have to know how to position it. And so, that's what, it's what I share with people is we have a duty. We have a duty to be able to put that money to work. If I hear about one more person who's getting, 2% in a bank account is huge, right? I used to work at CIBC, and there was a gentleman that would come in every month. And he would get me to update his bank book. And every month there was about $26,000 of interest go in. And it was like $1 million. It was $1 million bank account. And he was just so excited that he got $26,000. And you're just like, do you have any idea what percentage of interest rate that is for your money, right? But he didn't care. It was solid, all these kind of things. But so if you can offer somebody a solid return, on a solid asset, which with all the research that you've done onto why the market, why that property, why the renovations, why that's going to be a long-term buy and hold, you've done all that. You've checked all their boxes.
Absolutely. And you've phrased that with a lot of passion. So I can tell that that's probably how your conversation goes. And I think that is true. And it's definitely a reason why there are a lot of private lenders that, have worked with me in the past because, and still do, because, they want to earn a return and they know that this is the way that you're going to do more than the bank does without needing to do the work yourself, right? Because we all know real estate, like I've had case studies on here of people making, like we showed, 88%, 100%, infinity when you're pulling money out. But are you the person pulling up your sleeves? And I think a lot of people just, like you said, they don't have it in them. They don't necessarily want to do that. And that's not a bad thing. That's okay. It's okay to admit that. No,
I love those professionals. I go, you do you be the professional doing what you do. Let me do what I do. And together we'll be able to build, generational wealth.
So looking at this, when you set out, obviously you probably tried to do a few deals yourself and realized, okay, we're getting tapped out. And then you went on to the JVs. How did you start structuring that? Where did you get your base structure? Did you start with a lawyer? Did you start with an agreement that somebody had given you? And I'm sure it's evolved.
Yeah. So I went on Rav Tour's TV show and we taped an episode. And then the next episode that he was taping was with a gentleman named Gary McGowan. And Gary did where they were talking about joint ventures. And I said, is it okay if I sit over here and watch? So I was just I was soaking up all this information. And Gary had done 30 joint ventures. And I was like, this guy is blowing my mind. And he said, hey, come out to my meeting. I just love the simplicity of it. So I went out to his meeting and I was telling them I had a deal under contract, and a gentleman came over to me. Lo and behold, he'd be my mentor, still is to this day, Andrew Branham, known as the VTB King. And I don't even know how many properties he had at the time. And I'd said to the two guys, can I come out for drinks with you? And so I just started to learn about, I'd say to Gary, I was like, so tell me about your agreement. And he was like, I don't want to. And I said, why not? And he was like, because I don't have any agreement. So he had a lot of this stuff on family trust and on just old boys club. So you're kind of following the mix. Part of my coaching group, I went to the lawyer there, looked online for the agreements and started to create my own agreement. But it was a lot of, the first couple of joint ventures were hours on the phone, 2 hours. Trying to, back and forth. Well, I'm not sure. Let me ask, things like that. And then, I got off the phone another time and Larry's my husband. And he was like, well, what, why is that so quick? And I was like, she said yes. And he's like, it's only been 20 minutes because I knew all the things that she needed to know. So I was able to just touch on them a lot quicker.
Yeah. How do you keep it simple? Obviously for me, I've done a lot of just borrowing, just borrowing a basic loan with an interest. Yeah. And it's really easy to explain. Hey, here's the total amount you're going to lend, and here is your cash flow. How do you break it down and keep it real simple, especially when they're dealing with a contract that might be 5 pages or even more? Depends on what you're using. How do you deliver that in a way that it keeps the conversation simple?
I don't want to say it's like I don't dumb it down so much that I pretend like I talk above them, for sure. Mm-hmm. I meet them where they're at, kind of understanding what do you know and where do I need to pick up. A lot of it just comes down to the logistics. We don't get into if you want out and let's say you go through a divorce and you need out, or you die and it goes to your trustee, all that stuff's in the agreement. We really don't necessarily
it's in there because it needs to be, right?
Yeah, just the logistical part. But pretty much we talk about what are your roles and responsibilities and what are my roles and responsibilities. I need your money. I need your qualification. I need to know if you're out of the country so that if there's a maintenance issue, we can connect. Anything under $500, you're agreeing that I have the authorization to approve for me to be able to do a maintenance and repair without their permission. Anything over $500 gets discussed. trust. The bank account has transparency. They can see every transaction that goes on into it.
You know, one of the things, and it is a legitimate concern to me. I'm not going to get into the details as why. Working with a partner, and you as the working partner need their trust that they're not going to take money out of that account without permission. I mean, you can put whatever you want in an agreement, but if they have access to the account, it is possible. Yeah. Correct? And I have seen it.
Yeah.
And not saying necessarily personally, but I've seen it. So I'm just curious if if you've seen it and how you hedge against it, or are you really just in this as a relationship game and you read the people you're working with?
Yep. So a joint venture has two ends of the spectrum. Hey, we can be really good friends, but here's the agreement. And I like to tell people that we stay in the middle. Okay. Have I had the agreements that I've been at there? Here's like, so the agreements wasn't signed. Here's my $30,000 tip, actually $60,000 tip for somebody. So, great couple. We bought two assets side by side, phenomenal deals. The gentleman was dying. They really just needed them sold. I came in, but the agreement was that everything had to stay the same because the gentleman, as he was dying, didn't want, tenants being evicted and all this kind of stuff. So I have a heart, and I was that kind of investor. I was a very inspired investor. So I bought them, brought in my JV partners. A year later, we went to have them refinanced for us to be able to for them to refinance out some of the money. The gentleman had passed away at this point, and both assets had gone up $100,000.
Okay.
In 1 year.
That's pretty nice.
They didn't sign the JV agreement. They would not sign the JV agreement. They kept dragging their feet. They kept saying the lawyer, the this, the that, the this, the that. Okay. So, it ends well. You could see this going down fast. Like their greed factor, they started to question everything. And I was like, well, nothing's changed, all those kind of things. And so next thing you know, the bank account was closed.
Oh.
Closed and the money was gone. Yeah. So in the end, so you would say that I was part of, if it was 50-50, it would have been that I should have gotten $100,000, right? I got a check for $42,000. So you would say that I don't own two assets, that I potentially lost $60,000. But if we reframe it, because that's what we do, because that's what I do, and I say, you know what? So I didn't own anything. I didn't have my name on title. I didn't get an agreement signed. And I learned that I made $42,000 to learn that every agreement will be signed.
Yeah, you gotta dot your I's and cross your T's. It is important, especially because you're dealing with a lot of people, right? And some of them, you want to believe the best in people, but some of them are, they're new relationships, and you might not have a perfect read on them the first time.
Yeah, for sure. The other ones, I keep in mind that when somebody has $200,000 off of a HELOC or cash out of a bank account, and renovations are going on and down payment, and there's no income, and all they're getting is an email from Mandy and maybe some pictures along the way to be like, we're on schedule, we're on time. Their emotions are high. Like you can hear the wife going, are you sure? Do we need to go to Kingston to check out this renovation? Right? Things like that. Once the refinance happens and my partners get this $150,000 check in their hand to pay back the HELOC or put it back in their bank account, and all they have now is $50,000 on a completed duplex with two incomes, they calm down.
So the renovation part's where they get a little angsty?
Renovation part, yeah. And then there's, after the whole renovation and the refinance, I talk to my partners twice a year.
That's nice. Yeah, I think as long as the money's coming in, they probably just log in, see that. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. And there's money.
There's money.
People like that, the idea of that, right? Yeah. When things aren't paying or when they're paying it, heaven forbid, that's when they get a little upset. Yeah.
That's right. So how do we mitigate that, right? And keep in mind too that I won't go into a deal that I wouldn't do on my own. So when I go to buy a property, I say, how can I buy this property? Again, my mentor, Gary McGowan. How do I buy this property? Is it cash, my own financing? Is it private financing, or is it a joint venture? So as long as a deal is a deal that I would do, I will find a way to finance it. And a joint venture is just one of the ways. Do you see the difference in that?
Great way of looking at it.
Instead of saying this is a great joint venture property, well, then why don't you just do it on your own? Yeah. Well, I don't want to do it if a joint venture is not with me. Well, then maybe I don't want in if it's not something you do on your own. Their money is my money. Very nicely. Yeah. I'll place their money where I would place my own money. And keep in mind that the faster I can get them all their money back, the faster I get paid. Yeah. So to some degree, the risk is if I don't do well, I'm going to take longer and longer before I see a paycheck. The better I do, the better they've just done.
Yep.
So once we refinance out the money, I typically say to people, we will refinance that, recycle it onto another asset that we'll own together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm very with you there. That's part of like being a salesperson. Like if you're going to be a salesperson, you better have bought your product. And, you know, and that's the key, right? Like why wouldn't you want it on your own? Now, I mean, there's obviously the reality is why do you do JVs? Because if you try to do everything on your own, you would be not nearly as far along.
Yeah, it's not as scalable. Like I get the private financing, but you know what? There's something to be able to say, this is somebody's child's retirement. This is somebody's child's education. And you know what? I definitely have a big heart. I want to be able to help as many people as I can.
Yeah, that's great. I find that helps people kind of keep driven with their goals. And that's a good segue into that discussion is how do you keep so driven to do so much as you do? Obviously doing 75 properties over the 5 or 6 years is quite a bit compared to what 99% of investors will do. Yeah.
Work harder on yourself than you do on your job.
Okay. Give me some examples.
Yeah. Personal development. So the book beside my bed is Turn Your Stressings into Blessings. So it's a different way just to be able to reframe a tough day. I just came back from Archangel conference this past weekend. So some really good motivational speakers, being able to remind myself that I'm on the right track. I'm a human behavioralist. I study under a human behavioral specialist, and I'm a certified facilitator of a method that he does, which really just takes charges. So if you would get really upset with somebody. So I do a lot of stuff that's non-real estate as much as I do stuff that's real estate, because I believe that being a good communicator and a good connector is going to help me connect with a seller, connect with a JV partner, connect with my power team. Connect with my family so that I can say, hey guys, I'm going to be gone for 2 days and my family doesn't get all upset. That's the biggest tip I have.
Yeah. So just work on yourself. That's a big one. Now, I know not everybody is a believer that you should read so many books in a year. It's funny, I actually had Rav on the show, and
yes.
I haven't posted that episode yet.
He warms my heart, that man.
Yeah, I love Rav. Anyway, so Rav's like, oh, read a book a year, implement it. And I don't disagree. Like he's saying, implement it, right? Because if you're just going to read everything and implement nothing, what's the point? On one hand, yes. On the other hand, if you submerge yourself in how other people think, successful people think all the time, you're picking up stuff. Now, if you're not implementing anything, it's still not that effective.
Agreed. The first question I asked Rav when he got off stage, or when he was still on stage, there was asked questions, was, what book is beside your bed right now? Now, I forget what he said, but at the time, the important factor was for me to hear what a mentor like that had beside his bed. I just wanted to know what he was reading. I mean, I'm not an avid reader. I don't read 100 books a year at all. And we actually just debriefed after this conference this weekend to be able to say, what was your biggest takeaway and how are you going to implement that into your life? So and I share this very nicely with people, that we're in overwhelm with the amount of knowledge that we have out there. You want content, you got content. You want a podcast, you want da. How do we discern that into knowing what is the wisdom? Who has the wisdom, and how can I put that wisdom into my life? So when Rav Tour talks, like, I am quiet, I'm listening. The guy he just has so much wisdom. And there's various other people in my world that have wisdom that I stop talking and I listen. So I think it's sometimes knowing what is the noise and what's the wisdom, and how do I just, go straight to that wisdom.
Yeah, go straight to the wisdom. Now, do you have like a threshold as to like how many things you'll try to implement at one time, or are you working on one book and then listening to podcasts on your drive or what have you?
So the podcast that I listen to, I've listened to a few of yours. I feel the energy of the people that are there. Not necessarily to be like, oh, I'd love to do rent to owns. Nope. But look at the energy that guy has towards the rent to owns. One of your guests was a new investor, Michael Walk. Am I saying? Yeah. Okay. Watch. Yeah. And he's new. And I picked up from him his excitement again, like everything was new, right? And I go, remember when everything was new? And I took from him that feeling of newness, right? I took from Sarah a world of females in a lot of male world, and I took her power and her, that she shows up in a room and she has presence, and so I took from her presence in this room. I took from Dylan his like excitement of investing, right? Yeah. So it's not necessarily things that I can implement, but like feelings from people.
Yeah, I do love the immersing in how the people think. I think that is a big one, but I'm kind of restructuring things. I know Dylan's big on the miracle morning. 4 a.m. is way too early for me at the moment. Maybe I'll get there, but I'm making the decision to start just being consistent, starting at 6 a.m. just because it's not that hard for me to do. And it gives me, the hour, 2 hours of just like quiet time to just think and meditate, which I'm working on. That's not an easy thing for me, never has been, but it's getting better. And how much better I felt about my day to day because I did that to start. And, dedicated reading time, dedicated personal development time. And when else would you do that? Once the day starts?
Yeah.
It's like putting out fires, making plans, getting phone calls. Yeah. It just, I really do think that it's such a smart thing that he's doing. So he kind of got me onto that.
But here's another thing, though. Don't think that you're not doing something right because you don't get up at 4 o'clock.
Oh, no, not
right?
at all. No, not at all.
I always say to people, your life is perfect. You are here in this moment, and I'm glad that you're here. Somebody said to me just over the weekend, oh, if I wouldn't have married this man and had done this. And I was like, no, don't change. I love you exactly the way you are. And you might not be here in front of me right now if you hadn't had all these little experiences along the way. So please don't wish away anything that's happened in your past. Now we can go back into your past and see, let's uncover what some of the blessings were in a time that maybe there didn't feel like any. But I just like everybody to know that, your journey is the perfect journey. So, what is meditation? For some people, they go for runs. Well, they're not sitting quietly, but they're meditating as they run. I meditate when I walk through the bush with my dog.
Yeah. It's peaceful, right? It's the same type of quietness. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I find for me, like the more beneficial is just kind of writing down my thoughts like that. I get a lot of clarity out of that.
Yep. I definitely journal. I had a mortgage specialist call me one time and she's like, what are you doing? I said, I was like, nothing. Why? And she's like, are you cooking? And I said, no. She said, I like it when you're cooking because you're calm. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, typically she's caught me at the end of the day and there was a lot of stressful situations that were going on. And she picked up on when I was cooking, I was consumed. I had things going on, and cooking for me is nourishing my family, and so it was a good thing. But I just found it interesting that somebody picked up on who I was. So in that moment, that's something that it's my happy place.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, kind of just shifting back into our real estate discussion, because obviously there's lots of directions we could take this. But what is next for you? I mean, you've been on this JV path. Are you scaling it, or do you have a goal with it? What do you want to do?
Yeah, so I will be across Canada in majority of the cities that I can, create pods of properties. I want to elevate the quality of units. So all of my units are clean, safe, and appropriate. I've definitely bought some slumlord properties very recently, and the tenants at first are kind of a little annoyed, and then you're like, wait a minute, like, your living standard isn't my living standard. So I'm definitely branching out larger and larger. I have launched a mastermind program to be able to say, for a long time, I said, if you want to learn my JV structure, you got to come in and do a JV with me. And then I realized that I was kind of doing a disservice to a lot of people. So I am launching a JV mastermind that's just going to be going every 6 weeks. And then a mentorship program, continual personal development for me. And
so you're doing mentoring as well. Is that like, how did your mentor come along in your life, and what role did he play?
Yeah. So he was the guy at this meeting. He came over to me and he had X amount of properties, significant amount of properties. And he gave me a tip on one of my properties. So he's like, you got that triplex under contract? And I was like, yes, I'm sorry. And he was like, my investor was away and that's why I didn't get it. And like, to the point that I almost said, do you want it? But I didn't. And he said, hey, the back unit, it was legal non-conforming. It had a duplex and a garage in the back, but the garage had been lived in for years and years and years. And he said, the lady across the street will sign an affidavit for you to be able to confirm that it had been resided in prior to. So we got the affidavit signed. We gave her a $200 gift card, and now it's legal.
Oh, nice.
So the value of the asset went from 185 when my partner sold it to another partner. We flipped it to a JV, another JV. We made $180,000 in 2 years.
So between the two of you. Okay.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So she got all of her money back and 75, and 180 would be, I don't remember. No, I only got 75,000 out of the deal. So 150.
And that's just from one of 75 deals that you got going on right now. Mm-hmm. That is sweet. Mm-hmm. So, Mandy, what would be something you would want like our listeners and viewers to take away from this podcast?
Surround yourself with people who have what you want to have. So if you don't see yourself as this like active go-go investor, well, then stop hanging around people who are flipping houses. Yep. If you want to have the lifestyle of somebody who has real estate, but they're passive, then hang around those, like do what they do. And listen to, we don't need to pretend anymore. Like, I'm very authentic. I've been known to be able to say it as it is, sometimes a little too harsh, but you know what? Like we just show up as your authentic self. And, if it feels right and it fits, then take it. And if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. I'm not a flipper. I don't like flipping. I don't not like flipping, but it's just not my model. And I don't know how many people will say, why don't you flip? Why don't you flip? And I'm like, you know what? There's beautiful people that flip. Yeah. Let those people flip.
You want to make the money on that.
Cool,
So your income is made by the cash flow ultimately.
Flow.
So that's your only occupation right now. You guys are being paid by the cash flow on your properties.
Yep. And refinances. We've sold a couple single families just because they weren't of highest and best use of mortgage qualifications in our portfolio. Yeah.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. That's the way you want to do it. Honestly, and that's the reason not to flip. Because you don't need to. Yeah. Because honestly, any property you sell, you're going to regret it one day. I mean, you'll say, hey, you know what? I had a reason to do it at the time, but kind of wish I hadn't. Yeah. And that's pretty standard stuff, I think, for a lot of people.
But there definitely are people who it's very systemized. I mean, Luke, he goes, yeah, I'll flip the odd one because I need to keep my crew busy. And you're like, brilliant. Like, flip it. His crew is sitting there. It's better for his crew to be busy. He'll flip the property. Like he's got those, that's a larger mindset too. Whereas if somebody says, actually, I just chatted with somebody today on the phone and they borrowed 100% financing. They flipped this property. The contractor cost them more money than they ever thought. And they're going to lose $40,000. Okay. Right now, 2019. Like that should not happen.
No.
Okay. So is it wrong? Could it have been different? Yes. All of the above. But you should not be losing money in 2019 with all the knowledge, the resources, the podcasts, okay. So I just think, where did this guy kind of go off? Who was he listening to that was like rah, 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 and then missed the boat, didn't have his best interest in mind? Who's going to wake up every day and work on your financial future? You.
It's the same conversation about property management. No one cares about your stuff as much as you do. Your financial future is your responsibility, for sure.
Yeah.
So do you have a model, like a percentage like of ARV that you look for on a deal, like a basic, this is where I start looking?
Well, I don't get out of bed for less than 30%.
Okay, yeah. But if you're saying like market value, I'm looking for properties that I could buy and renovate and be in for,
under $60,000.
Oh, so you want to be able to renovate for 60?
No, I want to be able to leave my partner's money. I like $60,000 invested.
So is there a typical property that you'll look at? You kind of just know, hey, property's in the 280. If it's this type of property, I know that generally speaking, I can renovate it for that price.
Yeah. So my model has shifted because my markets have shifted. Midland before was brilliant and worked. Midland now doesn't work, which means the properties are still there. My team is still there, but my purchase price is now $350, and I'm barely struggling with appraisers to be able to get $400 on an ARV.
On a renovated. Yeah, that's something
So the purchase prices have gone up and the ARVs have not. The duplexes haven't caught up.
Because they need comparables.
Appraisers
need comparables.
Yeah. So until a realtor can show me 3 comparables at that higher rental rate or that higher ARV, it's probably going to be a market that I'm going to shy away from, because then I get into my partners are leaving $80,000, $100,000. And then I think I could just flip that on a turnkey $100,000 property and the cash flow is way better.
So you have other options at that point. And I've had that conversation a bunch today. I love that conversation, like kind of assessing your market, looking at it and knowing when the getting is good and knowing when it kind of isn't as good. And I had that happen in London to me. The deals I used to be able to buy, couldn't buy them anymore. Yeah. And it sucked, and I had a lot of momentum.
Windsor has to have had that happen too.
Windsor is still like, it's a lot of people say it's over, but it's not over there yet. But it's changed a lot. It's up.
Somebody said to me the other day, yeah, I've got a property in Windsor. And I was like, just for pure curiosity, tell me how much, right? And he was like 330. And I was like, whoa, that used sounds to be the case. High. Yeah. Right? Like I was thinking that, we were still in the 200, 250 price range.
Their cash flow is astronomical down there though still, well, especially on the student rentals. Yeah. I've heard some insane stuff. One guy I was talking to just bumped into him on YouTube, and he was commenting and he messaged me and got, he said he had $2,600 cash flow on one property. $2,600 on one property that he bought.
So I unskin that onion for a little bit. I sat across and the gentleman said the same thing. And I was like, that's awesome. I said, what's your current loan to value? And he was like, oh, well, I don't have a mortgage. I can't get a mortgage. It was a student rental. And I was like, right? Which I like. So you're comparing apples to apples. And that's another big tip for somebody is, don't just because somebody says they got all their money back and then you go, let's peel the onion back here. And you're like, so your brother and your dad and your cousin did all the work and you didn't pay them. Yeah. So your renovations were $30,000, whereas somebody else's would be $80,000. And you're like, okay, but remove some factors or add in some factors or, whatever that might be.
Yeah. I got a friend doing one of those right now, doing one where they're, it's the buddies and the brothers coming out working on weekends. And you're going to renovate way cheaper in that type of scenario.
We did the same thing. Yeah. Like my husband was working 40 hours at a job and 40 hours at our first property. Our anniversary was a bottle of wine at the property as we were drywalling. Like it was that was just life, right? But it teaches you a lot. And then you kind of go, is this what I want to do? Or am I looking to scale a business? And there's a fine line between, I think there was some statistics out recently about what percentage of the population own more than 3 properties. So typically 3 is your primary res, a cottage and a student rental, or a house for your parents. Okay. Those are your 3 properties. And I think there was, over 3 properties was 1% of the population owned more than 3. Over 10 was 1% of the 1%.
Cool.
That's right.
That's very cool.
So you realize that who you can talk to after you have more than 5 properties becomes slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And don't, make sure you're talking to the right people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mandy. Mm-hmm. Where would people get a hold of you if they wanted to find out more?
MandyBranham.com for my website, or Facebook, mandybranham.com. I've got a page and stuff, personal, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you have an Instagram? You have JV Queen?
Yep, JV Queen.
Yeah, okay.
LinkedIn as well, JV Queen. LinkedIn and Twitter, same thing.
Oh, you're all over the place.
Yeah, I am. It's fun.
All right.
I
Well,
love it.
I'll put the basics down there in the description so that the people can start there, and then I'm sure that you're a Google away for the rest of it. And so outside of all this stuff, when you're not investing, what are you doing for fun?
So I had a little cry moment today. My daughter is away for 10 months in Italy on a Rotary exchange, and it's her birthday on Monday. So here's like a reality check of a busy businesswoman, right? So I didn't get her package in the mail. I only put it in the mail today, and I was really upset with myself that she wasn't going to have it for her birthday. Right? Like I should have done it last week and shoulda, right? So anyways, what did I do for fun? I had a really nice Skype phone call with her today, just connecting. She was bebopping, telling me all about school. I sit and listen to my son. My husband's hunting right now. And so we spend time outside with the dog, going for walks.
Yeah.
Just
nice area for that. Cold area in the winter, but
lots of
snow.
I'm pretty masterminding with people who are going places.
Nice. Actually, that's one more follow-up I have just before we wrap this up is for people kind of looking for their mentor. Yeah. How would you say to approach them? I know I've been fortunate enough. One of my mentors, he would pick up the call whenever I called, which, I mean, that's a very delicate thing to work into because you don't want to overwhelm them. How do you recommend somebody new approach it if they're seeking a mentor?
How can I add value to you? When I met my mentor, I knew everything about the community, and he was an outsider coming to invest. So he was already here. He was already investing, but he didn't know the ins and outs. He didn't know about the development of a new motel in the high school and stuff like that, because I was on the student council, all these kind of things. So I would say to him often, what can I do for you? Okay. And so there are things that maybe they don't know because they're busy doing whatever. And you know what? One thing about it was friendship. We would go and view properties together. It kind of gets lonely as an entrepreneur. So, without always saying they're giving to me, because every relationship is symmetrical. So they're getting just as much out of it as you are. But it's okay to ask them every once in a while, what can I do for you?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or just go out of your way to help them, right? What is it there? And I think the key thing there is to build on that is it's not always going to be glamorous. Like sometimes the way that you can add value isn't necessarily glamorous, but is it worth what you get back is the other thing to consider, I would say. Yeah. But yeah, it is tough. I do get quite a few of those inquiries and it's like, I want to be able to, but some of it's like my work is kind of complex, and if you want to do the work that you say you want to do, I got to teach you a lot so you can do it. There's other work that you could start with until you get your feet under you.
Oh, for sure. And I wouldn't hesitate if somebody were to say, hey, I'd like to help you, Mandy. And I'd say, okay, I need you to, I need you to go organize my paperwork that I'm going to give to my bookkeeper. Nothing sexy, nothing anything, but
that's
super
gold. Actually, I would love that. I'll see all your numbers.
Yeah, that's right. And you'd be like, where does this one go? What do I write on it? Just stuff like that. But you know what? Also be okay with having to pay for a mentor. If you, because, if I have one more person that says, hey, Mandy, I'd love to go out for coffee. Yeah, I get that. But, I acknowledge as well, there's something to be said that the value you're willing to pay for something. And I mean, my first coaching group was well over 15,000. So, I knew that when I paid that, I stood up and I showed up and I became the best version of myself. Whereas if it's free, you get free. So, you just want to make sure that you are acknowledging, what you want to get out of it. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, that's great. I really appreciate you coming on the episode, and I think I'll probably be bumping into you at the meetup later on tonight.
Absolutely.
So, thanks again, Mandy, and I'll be sure to keep tabs and see how you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
Thanks for listening and watching today's episode. Quick reminder, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on iTunes. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons and the notification bell, and feel free to post a comment below. And while you're at it, why not share this episode with somebody you think it could help? I'd really appreciate it, and it's going to help grow our community around this podcast. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the next one.